Welcome back to the channel. This is the Purple Political Breakdown. Some of the most nuanced and thoughtful takes, discussions, whatever you want to hear, of course. And you can watch a lot of the podcast content. And I'm going to try to do like frequent-ish streams as well to talk about other things that's going on that, are not confined into a podcast episode. All right.
Should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
This is the 112th episode of Metal.
Today we're reacting to Black conservatives versus white liberals. I know Destiny's on this one, so I was curious, so I'm gonna react to it. And before I react to it, I'm gonna cut this mango. Look at this new technique that I learned to cut a mango. Mangoes are the best fruits that exist, by the way. And there's really no apples don't come close. Watermelon are up there, you know what I'm saying? Watermelon are up there. Bananas, nah. Bananas are good like ingredient fruits. Strawberries, nah, they don't taste as good. Mango peeling strategy I learned from TikTok. Look at that. You see the 4 slits and then you just peel it back. Okay, that's not okay. I'm gonna start this. Well,
Ground, and we want you to help us decide what the next 112 episodes will be. Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle Ground with us.
Alright. Wow, the debut of my mango peeling strategy.
I was chosen to read the following prompt. White Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
I think I'm a rarity here.
It would seem so.
Okay, I'm not pulling an XQC, I'm actually reacting.
White, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not. I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where black people have tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, yes, where, yeah, that this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past.
Look at me trying to freaking peel a mango. I agree with a lot of things that Destiny's saying right here, right? I do think that people look into the past a little too much, obviously, but you can't discount the past because the past shapes what the current society is, right? In order for you to create a better society moving forward, you need to know the mistakes that were made in the past and learn from them. Okay, so we need to understand that systematic racism, whether or not you believe it exists today, is 100% existed back in the past and caused the current disparity between black and white people. Now, using that as a end-all be-all reasoning is foolish. You feel me? So important.
Past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by, you know, doing these things and seeing them as inferior.
Doing what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture in places where we are now.
So
but I want to get back to the history of it because we're talking about.
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's.
Yo, Chandler, spitting. What side am I on? I ride the middle. Whoever makes the most sense gets the credit. You feel me? All right.
Out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free.
Well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing.
You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario because yes,
okay, you want
to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she.
Chandler's going. Chandler. Yo. Chandler's cooking.
thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people.
I
So
don't
that's why I feel so
necessarily
strongly
agree, but
about
he's
it,
cooking.
because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath. So,
I'm breathing.
okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I
Alright,
am,
okay.
sadly.
I don't know what
Damn.
that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least the I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean,
It
sure, if
can't.
you're talking about a lottery,
It
just hey,
literally
take
can't.
money.
Giving people money can 100% hurt them. What are you talking about? This is like, what are you talking about? It 100% can. People, money is not an automatic like solution to struggle. Like, what are we talking about?
But
Yes.
there are strings
Take money.
attached to that money.
Take all the
there
money.
are strings attached
Give
to
them
that
millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care.
What the
Giving
fuck?
money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has
thinking
not
that-
happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened. It hasn't been a
You're saying
reparations. It hasn't been this
so
or that.
what
it has
you're
been a
saying
welfare program,
welfare
Great
was
Societies
designed.
Act that
Welfare
was built
was-
off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these.
So then let
he
them
look-
keep the
he
family
looks
together
up
and
his,
keep all the
Thomas
money.
Sowell.
I mean,
There you
I
go.
guess
Boom,
so,
done.
but I guarantee you,
I guess
there's
so.
no way that
Why
would
would you
happen.
not advocate for that?
So, in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like
Alec.
the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era,
Jacob's so
and
uncomfortable.
you have policies like redlining that influence how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put black people as generally in a worse off position than white Americans?
I think generation by generation, the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation, the effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think that was a great start for things. But obviously, we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat
Okay,
Party.
well, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not that's more aligned with more
Chandler's
racist
cooking,
policies in
y'all.
this
Very
country.
difficult to compare 2020's conservatism to 1880s conservatism.
Cooking, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. This mango's delicious.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing
Go
that
buy yourself
white
a
people have a
mango.
true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in. That to me is real racism, and that's what we need to stop
White Americans
allowing to
have more
happen to us,
advantages than
because
black
black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into. It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain way.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure.
It's definitely situational based, but the problem here is you can't create a blanket ideology indicating that just because you're black, you're automatically going to be unfortunate. You can contextualize it and saying more than likely, if you're black and living in a poor environment, you're going to struggle more often than not. Once you contextualize it, you can start breaking down why is that, right? These blanket statements prove no actual merit to the case because they are not objectively true. A black person inherently is not going to be worse off than a white person. But once you contextualize it a little bit, that's when you can get to the root of the problem. A lot of people don't do that, which is the problem, but people need to do that more.
Sure, you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently. But in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything because of being Black. And if anything, it's given me more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm Black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a Black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
You think college went by fast? No. College football goes by faster. The regular season is only 14.
Did Destiny stop up? He did. Good man.
Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular
Everybody's
time.
so uncomfortable.
And I think that every Black person knows
All
how
the
to get
white
into
people are
college.
so
Every Black,
uncomfortable.
I mean, you can pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was Black man. The Forbes was Black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
I can definitely say that it creates a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember my first week at the University of Illinois, I was sitting with some classmates and a white student turned to me and jokingly like, hey Xavier, like, did you just attach a smiley face when you applied for this college? And I started asking what he meant, and he said to me that he was like, you're Black, I'm assuming you had decent grades, you could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university. So I was livid by that, and I went off, I started naming all of my accomplishments, and I felt so confident only for about an hour, because then an hour later I started saying to myself like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity, and I started wondering to myself, did I earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And too, I've seen it in the sense of like affirmative action taking away from other people who are minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school. He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there and he didn't get in. And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have such a large Asian population that they want to admit other people.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it excludes so many Asian Americans from getting into universities who do deserve a spot and they can't get in because of affirmative action, which again, like you were saying, was necessary at the time, but now it's like.
I had a podcast episode, a relatively recent one. We talked about affirmative action, and one thing you need to know when it comes to affirmative action is it had a inherent good purpose at the beginning. But what tends to happen with all these liberal policies is it goes a little bit too far, and this is just another example.
Anybody, if you have the skills to do it and you're in America, you can get in.
I don't think affirmative action is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of a background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, you know, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took, that might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come from, the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a Black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick, is it going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip code?
I think we should do away with all of it. Just like submit an application.
I don't agree we should do away with all of it, right? One solution that we talked about in terms of affirmative action is that there can be a type of quota system, because what we want to do and what education is a gateway for is education is a gateway for increasing the middle class. That is extremely important. In order for us to do that, the people who are poor need to be educated. Their kids need to be educated. So I wouldn't say outright get away with it, but there needs to be a lot more delicate in the process. That is why they are going after legacy admissions now, where if your father or mother went there and donate large sums of money, you'll automatically get a pass as their son or daughter. Legacy admissions have no inherent good purpose for society. That's just like who you know, I know this person, right? It's just like passed down generational wealth. That's all that's really going on. Legacy admissions inherently, like on the surface, even if they get away with like go away from it, it will always exist. Like the dean is going to know this rich celebrity and they're going to consider the applicant of their son or daughter more so than other applicants. That'll never truly go away. That's just a more who you know. That's just society, right? But yeah, it shouldn't be a blanket.
No demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like, why do they ask all that stuff?
To get to know the applicant. Like, they have, it has a purpose.
So,
right?
if affirmative action accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times.
In the United States, the average black and Hispanic, can we get away with these? Yeah. The Latino households earn about half as much as the white average, only about 15-20%. I mean, that's not indicative of society, really, because we know the poor communities are minorities.
Greater wealth than black people as a whole, per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see
Curious. Why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic abilities,
desire.
It's more economic than racial. That's such an idiotic way to think. The first thing you think about is race.
To
What
go,
are we talking
desire
about?
to.
I mean, zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Hispanic people to white people to this Aaliyah, you have to concede. This is where conservatives fall in a trap, right? Y'all don't want to concede a few things, which is why Chandler was great when he came on. You have to concede that systematic racism has caused a lot of black people to suffer under economic disparities. You have to concede that because that's objective truth. What you need to do from there is diagnose current society and current issues and current reasons why black people on large are not migrating from that economic disparity.
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs.
Chandler,
what?
here we go.
Sorry, redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
It
a
is
look
relevant.
at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families. I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household.
I do have a question. These admissions they are talking about now, is it for a full scholarship, or are we talking about being admitted to just have these students pay out the ass and get in debt? They're talking about now, is it for a full scholarship, or are we talking about being admitted to just have these students pay out the I mean, what are you referring to exactly? I need
Isn't
to
going
know
to
what you're
make them
referring
the
to
richest man in the
exactly.
world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school. Nonetheless,
You mean
the ability
parent.
to even get to college.
You mean
Yeah,
two-parent?
the child, yes, but a two-parent household
Yeah.
in comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed to being sent into prison by doing crimes or not doing very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's life. And by
Facts.
that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush, and maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe
Honestly,
can
I
barely
should be
get
on
to the sixth grade
Jubilee.
level into a
Petition for me
college
to go
hope that
Jubilee.
that's the thing that fixes the problem.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's
agreed.
Quite a myth, in fact.
Whoa,
I think
hold up. I need to see how he. Okay, let me
that
hear,
have the qualities to get to Harvard were before affirmative action could just completely overlooked. Clarence Thomas is the perfect example. Regardless of what you think about him, he was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action, because it focused on finding people that were again, like just overlooked for those.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all black people or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity, it started out as that, and then it morphed and I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who.
When someone applies, if they're given a yes, is it get in free, or is it yes, you're admitted, but now here are the fees? So are people angry that they can't get in to pay for Harvard, or are they mad they can't get in for free? They're mad that they can't get in. Now, there is like another dynamic, obviously, when it comes to fees, but the important part, especially when you go to Harvard or any of these Ivy Leagues, is getting in first, because the expectation after you get in, even if you go in student loan debt, is that you'll get like a 6-figure, 7-figure job. So it's the getting in part that is the conversation as of right now. The problem here is that, based on what I think his name's Alex said, affirmative action, as we've seen, Jacob and Alec, as we've seen, is that it pushed people who weren't prepared to go into these Ivy League schools. And you said these are a myth. Well, it's statistically true. Statistically, we know that these people are not qualified to go into these universities. They're going into the universities, they're failing, and then dropping out. Like, that is just the truth. It's not providing the solution that the expected solution that we wanted to provide, obviously. Right? So I think it's obviously much more nuanced that they're just like picking and choose. I think they need to make sure that that people are being chosen for merit, of course. But I do think it's such a tough thing, because you want to make sure that certain people are not getting it easy. So, like, for the people that I think that should obviously need to be giving a certain level of credence to is people who are poor, right? So people who are poor, that are living these, minority communities, poor communities. Some people, like some kids, can be extremely intelligent, right? And I think there needs to be a process to ensure that these individuals are not just given the admittance, but they are giving a challenge to provide them to showcase their ability, that when they reach that echelon that we're talking about, the Ivy Leagues, they will succeed. Because I think that people who are poor in these poor communities inherently just won't have the resources that these rich kids will. So you need some way to bridge that gap. That's 100% true. You need some way to bridge that gap.
Who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black on the board, we need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever, on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now
tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it
initially
started good
it was
and then
necessary,
ended whatever.
but then it
and I don't
morphed
think that
into something
affirmative
else.
action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
There's no meritocracy in this country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy.
Shut up. What are you talking about? There's no meritocracy. Elon earned his wealth, got Twitter, and his Twitter's not getting worse. That's just your opinion. Oh my goodness. I already don't like Alec. You just like, agree to disagree when it comes to Twitter. I think that the functions that he's putting in Twitter is more beneficial to achieve the ultimate goal of a public square. But Alec does.
That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, et cetera, that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive their.
What? What are you talking about?
From home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling.
What does this have to do with anything? It's just, you wanted a gotcha, and this is not a gotcha.
Financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do
so
that too, though.
Those are the
That's
people.
not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
if we're looking at
overwhelmingly.
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the raw numbers, but if you
I don't know,
actually
what are the
understand
wrong
what you're talking
numbers?
about.
No
The
number
issue
is
is poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks.
Maybe we should make
Shout out
college
her.
free,
I don't remember her
and maybe
name.
we want to have affirmative action wouldn't be that necessary.
And it'll get even more ghetto.
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you, that will overwhelmingly help black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
I agree. And I think we should look at things from income, not race. That's what I think. Economic. Trump supporters black lives. 17%. Ooh, we're gonna see Chandler. I'm not surprised Chandler's coming up. Not gonna lie. Supports black lives. Whoa, Alec is stepping up. Okay.
When your cat's a me, then your dog is too.
And it's hard to know what's fake or true.
Just raise.
Skip. You weren't
I think that
about to hear
President
the
Trump
bars.
supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him
American citizens. Good caveat.
doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's of course going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it, nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
I've heard him say he knows all the best black people. He has all the best black friends. I do support black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression. But I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives. But the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift black people.
The economy affects black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I supported personally. Well, yeah, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, you know, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like, okay, I did say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally.
This guy is just a contrarian. Like, how are you up here and arguing with them? That's crazy.
Really want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives.
This is why people don't like liberals. They never want to concede, like, at all. Liberals are way worse than conservatives when it comes to kind of conceding a point. They are so uptight about their moral high ground.
So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think to happen to black people, like I think, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. I think that that's not like, okay, I did say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just.
Why do you? I guess that's a surprise look.
Says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Then why does
He does and he doesn't.
so many people hate him?
Yeah.
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote. Neither time.
That's a
That's
liberal
what your
talking
side
point.
loves to say.
That's a liberal talking
I'm
point.
helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's
Bro, just shut up. Like, I'm skipping past Alex.
hilarious.
He's just
Of
talking.
a lot of things.
He's just talking.
Support him like die
Thank
hard.
you. Jesus. Just chatting. Straight
Trump
chat.
is less of the issue and more so the people that support him like die hard. They facilitate that kind of like hate, I think, for a lot of people, not just black
So
people,
lean.
but like
I mean, this
I can
man
see so lean.
took out like a full page in a newspaper calling for the public execution of 5 black kids. His hotels, all of his businesses have rampant history of denying black people apartments or whatever. So
I forgot about that. I should not have stepped forward.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump.
Alex, get
so
your
I don't
shit
think he really cares
together.
about anyone, I guess, unless you're like super rich or whatever.
When you look at his history on racial issues, whether it's the shithole countries comment, the plethora of comments he made about Mexican people, just the comments he's made about Muslims, the idea that Trump cares at all about some particular racial minority, I think is a little bit silly. I think Trump will say whatever he needs to say to rile up his base and to get elected.
I don't necessarily think those statements come from a place of hatred. I don't think he was ever saying specifically, oh, if you pray 5 times a day towards the east or towards Mega based on wherever you are, you're a bad person. I think he was saying if you like to fly planes into towers or behead people or throw people off of buildings, maybe you're not the most virtuous person out there.
I supported Trump because he made the economy good, and so the economy then impacted black people, white people, Latino people. It impacted everybody. But Trump, he didn't think specifically, I don't think, about black people. He thought about himself, and he thought about how can I make America great for me, and making and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go with this guy, and the reason I'm gonna go with this guy is because if he can make America great and he can make that it rise for everybody, I'm gonna benefit from that. So that's why I went, and that's why I voted for him. That's why I supported him.
But how does that specifically benefit black people? Again,
She just said it didn't support black people. Jacob, listen. And I'm trying to support Jacob because he is like the Gear 5 shirt, you know what I'm saying? We got the straw hat flag back there, you know what I'm saying? But like, I'm not surprised because a lot of anime fans are. I'm one of the good ones. Hubris.
He's a
Not
businessman, but he's also a racist businessman, and like well documented. So
Prove
like
it.
I just.
And Biden's not. Biden's not.
Yes, he is. He created the crime
Okay,
bill.
so-
So that's regardless of
They're both racist.
the
Well,
point.
address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took that
actually,
full page out after
okay,
they were
so I haven't.
He wanted them
dealt-
to be killed,
Well,
executed, just because they were black.
That story.
And he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers. I just like.
I think Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media. I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard in the news and wanted to take action.
You can't create excuses for someone who's being racist. That's at that point you're just being ignorant, Chandler. I'm sorry to say. I call a spade a spade.
Himself as a
If he's
businessman.
racist,
not as
he's
a
Why are you
racist at that
infantilizing
time.
him?
I don't like also real quick because people keep bringing up this comparison to the '93 crime bill from Biden. That crime bill, this was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill. Everybody in the United States supported that crime bill. The idea that that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hates black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park 5 that were already exonerated. That wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the prosecutor of the 5, he was a black guy, and so in being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
Or just make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything
or just makes a mistake, shout out Destiny.
you disagree with in regards to the Central Park Five, even if they themselves are a black person, they're just a self-loathing black person. They're just a racist black person.
If they disagree
that
with me, they're
prosecutor was
racist.
doing his job.
Shut up. Shut up. You're not funny. Alec, you're not funny. You're not funny. You're not funny at all.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I like that.
I think
policy.
Trump, is, I
like
think
that.
Trump
That's
has
a hilarious
shown
policy.
a history
It's not
of
funny. Don't laugh. It
ignorant
was not
at
funny.
best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even
Prejudice,
think he's a
right? Yeah,
conservative.
prejudice.
Fake
personally.
conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So.
You're not funny, Alec. Shut up. they got the token hate. I hate this guy. Or man. No man, no man.
So I need to expound. I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
He's just, yeah.
You never know.
Just like
One
the
of those
hat.
kind of moments.
Sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made
No,
a
I'm not
point.
sure. I just
You
need
made a
to
point
know.
Bro, you're not-
a
you
couple
got-
minutes back where you said
It's not funny.
he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that at the. I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing. And I don't know. You can call me self-loathing. You can call me self-hating.
so you're
you can call
saying
me
calling
racist.
for the
Just
public
ignorant. You're
execution
young.
of
You're
5
ignorant.
black men that were
It's all right.
exonerated to
When
rile
has he
up
done
his
that
base?
during the campaign trail? He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
he did that when he
again,
was a scared
it's
businessman
everything.
in New York.
It's
feeling
everything
bad.
Steve said about the comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants. Why does he
never
need-
about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists. These are very important delineations to make. And if you believe
I
that
think
what
you
you fed the media
understand,
about,
or
oh, it's
I
all
think
Mexican immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, oh, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex. Wow,
What was
we're
the
back
rationale
again.
behind axing or trying to axe DACA? Were these people were registered with the federal government, they were in school, they were doing everything that they needed to do. They had no home elsewhere. They were brought into this country as minors. Like, what's the explanation for that?
I think
Like,
that requires more nuance. Like I mentioned before, I
They
think there were
already
some
paid for their
people.
education.
I think
Why
there
would
were
you
some
wanna kick
people
them out?
feeding him bad policy advice, thinking, oh, this will be really good for your base.
See, again, he's being a little ignorant. He's young, so he can't conceptualize that things are not black and white yet, right? He's educated, he has a firm belief, but once you really start diving into this and get more experience, you realize things are not black and white. Like he said, he's nuanced. So he just wants to like look good right now. Like Chandler's a smart guy, but he's just being a little bit ignorant on his defense of Trump.
And he's doing a lot as a president.
that's okay. That's okay if we feel that way. But
So,
at the end of the-
if I take responsibility for something, if I say he has responsibility for something, well then you're right. But if I'm saying, well, maybe there are some people around him advising him falsely,
Dude, you have to prove that, Chandler. Plus, even if people are giving him advice and he takes the advice, that's still his problem. Like he still committed the bad action. You can't excuse people from making bad action and bad decisions because of people around them. That's literally the definition of it, infantilizing him.
it's infantilizing.
He was the president.
There's no good way.
He
to
called the shots.
But if someone was
What
about
are you
to-
talking about?
The only path forward to solving illegal immigration starts with amnesty for everybody here. The reality is there's some 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants here. We're not deporting them all.
With the people who are already here, that's a lot
that's
more of
an
a
interesting
messy,
take.
nuanced conversation. But as far as people
Yeah, it would
coming
be,
in, I
since they're already here, it would be extremely hard to just deport them all. Yeah, that's probably like it's just not really humane to just kick them out the country, right?
do think we need stronger borders and actual like vetting happening.
And I just want to say,
Agreed.
in Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise. He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we will give these people amnesty. So that's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Wow.
Ninth circle, baby.
My political beliefs have changed
Had
in the
jokes.
past.
There's nothing more powerful
Get
than
better
you
jokes.
making your thing
Jesus.
happen.
Be funnier.
Really going for
I grew up in a conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And my parents
Usually
were
that's
always
for
pretty
white
political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as like, sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So I stand by that. So yeah, I kind of leveled out thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here a year ago.
I mean, maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
So I grew up conservative, but I did have more left-leaning ideas about like Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I did agree that Black people were oppressed and all of these different things, and that we were kind of got the short end of the stick. And during 2020, when there was everything crazy was happening, and I started.
Well, I really care about their. No, I'm watching the full video. For me, I started out left, then I went to the military, and so I definitely became more right. Then I went to a liberal arts college and got a little bit more left, and then I grew up and became moderate because it's the best place to be.
Started organizing rallies against the mandates because I thought that they were just totally unconstitutional and un-American. And then George Floyd dies, and initially I was like enraged like everybody else, and then it started to become this weird like political like agenda masquerading or behind his face. Like the face of what was actually happening started to peel off, and I was like, oh, I mean, I would counter-protest BLM activists at my town square when I lived in Texas, and they were some of the most just bitter, vile, horrible people you could ever meet. Meanwhile, like the Confederate group that would protest there against them also, they were like the nicest people ever to me, ironically.
I grew up in a Democratic, not a Democratic household, but kind of apolitical, but everybody was Democrat. And then I got a job. And when I got a job and I saw all the taxes come out and I started looking to the left and to the right and going, oh, my money's whittling away over here. And I said, you know what? After Reagan, I'm just going to go ahead and declare myself a Republican, and I've been a Republican ever since.
My mom is pretty liberal. She married my stepdad when I was like 15, 16 in high school, and he's super conservative, like loved Trump, diehard Trump fan. And they had a lot of like back and forth, hearing the two sides, like
Yo, her mom was a liberal and her dad was a Trumper. Crazy. You can find love anywhere.
people who are on such polar opposites just like argue all the time about stuff. Seeing that there's a lot of similarities in both sides, like the far radical left and the far radical right, they have a lot of similarities. They just don't want to.
That's what I said. They're two sides of the same coin. I've been saying that. All right, bro.
Come and like see it.
I started off actually kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter, who is now a ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point in my life when I was the most like libertarian was probably the lowest point in my life financially.
Yo,
and I think it's because something that
that
conservatives do
eagle
really
sound?
well is they make you feel like you can always like succeed as long as you work hard.
It's crazy
enough.
how he
That's
goes
something
by
that progressives
destiny
and liberals
everywhere he
suck
goes.
at. That you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black, so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman, so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will
his
tell you,
brand.
listen, if you work
Not
hard,
mad
you can
at
do
it.
whatever you want,
My
like, just
brand
as
is
long
my
as you're willing
first
to put in the
name.
work. And I felt that
And my
way up to the
podcast.
moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life, and I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making $15,000, $20,000 a year, I'm like, I gotta vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And now that I'm older, like if the government wants to take, a few, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard.
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so. Very lucky.
Do you think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life. And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is over. And that's really sad to me.
Yeah, so I used to be a
I agree wholeheartedly about that concept.
liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, as much as I regret that now. My family was pretty left-wing. Some of the people in my family were like radically left, like would refer to white people as blue-eyed,
Very
redheaded
interesting
devils,
way
things
to
of
spell
that
your name,
nature.
Xavier.
And as I got older, I actually started being really outspoken for BLM. I was supposed to be on a reality show teaching people how to be a BLM activist. At the time, I did.
He got the looks. He's a handsome dude. I gotta get in the gym, bro. I gotta be like him. Yeah, be like him.
Did a deep dive on BLM, and I started to realize all of these lies. So then I took a step back. I'm like, okay, what else am I being lied to about? And I started looking at the Democratic Party and questioning my own loyalty to being on the left.
I personally think both sides tend to be racist in different ways. I don't think the government is on the side of the people in general, and that's just me being, a radical.
When I was young, I used to jump for joy and say, oh yeah, Obama, black president, that's so amazing. He's the same color as me. But when I started to do more research, one of the biggest things I was confused about is, well, why is he a Democrat? What is a Democrat? I did more research about the Democrat Party. And sure, you guys are going to pop off about the head saying, oh, there's a party switch in the Southern strategy and all these things.
Which is true.
Which you may say is true. I don't believe it is true at all.
You're
I
wrong.
understand, you may think I'm wrong.
You are.
However, one of the biggest questions I had was, why is
Alec
Obama
is
in the
so
same party
arrogant.
as the people that started the KKK, the same people that voted against the Civil Rights Act, the same people that are on the news talking about how black people aren't able to accomplish anything and need to be on welfare and need to be promoted with affirmative action and things of that nature.
I also, in terms of, I guess, of my political journey, I was raised conservative, actually. And then high school became, I guess, sort of apolitical. And then throughout college and I guess just throughout my life since then, I think I guess you can call me a progressive, you can call me, socialist, whatever you, but I guess that's, in the area of where I fall.
Imagine wearing a Gear 5 Luffy shirt to Jubilee.
A Bernie fan in 2016, and then you transitioned to being, I guess, more conservative.
It's a cool shirt, though.
I guess, I don't know, to me, Bernie Sanders, from what he said to what you think now, what was the shift?
For me, it was socialism, because back then I was a very broke college kid, and I just
Jacob,
had
you're
this
so
mentality
nervous,
that everything
bro.
should be free, and I was feeling a bit entitled, like everything should be handed to me because I was black, because I was very much in that mentality. As I learned more about free markets, as I learned more about capitalism, I started to appreciate that much more. I started to appreciate small business much more, limited government, low regulations. I just started to like that much more. But I would say just more when it comes to economics, I don't agree with him.
Reparations are necessary.
Of course, Jacob and Alec
When we
are
talk
the
about
only ones
reparations,
stepping
I
up.
think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier,
That would be, regardless of what way you do it, it's unfair to just give people fucking money. It's like, how you, let me
would
I think
disproportionately
reparations is
benefit
one of
black
the
people,
dumbest
because
ideas
if you recognize
I
that
ever
they are
heard.
disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more black people than.
No, it wouldn't, bro. It would, the money would not, you can't guarantee the money would be utilized appropriately. Like, if you want to argue back in the day after, like, slavery was ended, should reparations have happened then? I would agree. But now, no, it's not going to solve anything.
Than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like mostly like black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance. That to be able to come back and as a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth, you
Black
could not
people
get
can't do
that as a black American.
When was this? When was this? There's no way that exists now.
So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that
Free healthcare and free college for black people only is so fucking stupid. Oh my goodness. That would tear the country apart, where it's just black people getting free healthcare and free college. Imagine how fucked up our American society would be if that happened. And as a black person myself, of course I would want that. If I'm being selfish and greedy, of course I want that. But as a society, that is a terrible idea.
everyone has like an equal opportunity to
You're not giving the people equal opportunity. You're giving them equal outcome. And it's not even an equal outcome, because it's white people on whole are not getting free healthcare or free college. So it's like, what are we talking about, bro?
Themselves to build a better life for themselves. So it's sort of like, and I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow. You know,
Germany did it right after. like I said, stop comparing current reparations to Germany after World War II.
By don't issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even.
Bro, I don't need the fucking government to apologize to me. What is this victim ass shit, bro? I'm cursing so much because it's so stupid.
But also just.
Bro, I said, yo, the government hasn't apologized. Like, after slavery, I 100% think that the government should have apologized to black people. During Jim Crow, they probably should have apologized to black people. Current people who, there's probably nobody alive from the slavery period. But, like, apologizing now, it just makes no fucking sense. It's just like
donating to, like, different funds and, just, I think a more equitable society striving for that is reparations in and of itself.
So stupid. Some of this.
I have no problems with reparations if they had happened initially during the slavery or the civil rights movement or any of that. But to try and do that now logistically just doesn't really make any sense. And like, where would this money come from? Like, we're in so much debt as a nation. Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Like, do mixed people get it? And like, do Irish people get reparations when they were indentured servants?
I think for reparations, if you can find specific instances of somebody being like actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of like the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of like Chinese people building railroads or Irish people or whatever, people being deprived of things, that's okay. But otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare.
I agree with Destiny. That's why I said if you did it right after, then sure. But there's no way you're just gonna blanketly give people money that are black. Now, if it happens, will I take a check and I'll say, oh, YOLO? Of course, I will take the check. I will 100% take the check. It's going in my pockets immediately. But will I turn around and say, this was a horrible idea, you did something stupid, I'm just benefiting off your stupidity? 100%.
No possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege. I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Like, had this happened a long time ago, I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where people were just completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through, and I don't think that white people are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know we don't want to use the word virtue signaling, but it's sort of like a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion. In states like California, where they've been throwing around the idea of, oh, we want to pay out this much money to every black citizen in there, in this state, it's like,
what were you saying? I think the reparations argument comes up because after slavery, there was a promise of 40 acres and a mule, and that wasn't fulfilled. I think Destiny talked about it. I should look into that a little bit more. So all this time has passed and people want that debt repaid. I just learned that black people who own Central Park in New York had their land taken by the government. Imagine the amount of money their family would have had now. Yeah, like Destiny said, which I agree with. If you can trace those specific people, 100%, they get their reparations, they get their money back. Like, the people you can actually trace it to, they 100% deserve the justice from what they've been screwed over for. So that's a little bit different, obviously. The government should always take responsibility for people they screwed over, especially if they can trace it. But their ancestors who have no correlation or relation to specific instances, they just don't deserve it. I'm sorry to say, especially when you're living in this privileged society that we live now. So yeah, it'd just be, like you said, the biggest thing here is it would be a logistical nightmare, and it would create huge friction in America. It just doesn't make sense.
oh, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think that we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, "You owe me money. You owe me money. I'm not paying you any money." It would just really rip us apart.
Giving somebody money doesn't mean anything if they don't know what to do with the money or how to handle the money. So if the primary issue in Black culture or with Black people is generational trauma, then maybe they need more therapy than they need money, honestly.
Which conservatives are also against.
Well, that's kind of my argument. Like, if there is like that like generational trauma or whatever. Like
Now I did
think
see something about the conservatives
examples of like
being
free
against,
healthcare.
mental health stuff.
They could see a therapist and not be, fall into debt. And I think the argument of like the logistical nightmares of it, I think if we want to pay for something in this country, we usually find a way to do it, especially when it comes to the military.
That's
so,
not, that's not
I
an
mean, we
answer.
pay for
if we want to, we
multi-billion-dollar
can do it.
jets
It's not the
all
dollars,
time.
it's who's supposed to get them.
Not to attack progressives, but that is like the most progressive idea in the world. Is like I can see the headlines like reparations voted on in Congress to be paid in the form of free therapy for people in the hood. That just sounds like the funniest thing in the world. But
well, I also don't think it's gonna come directly from like white person to black person. Like, oh, your lineage affected his lineage.
It is though. Like in San Francisco, they were going to raise the average family, or the average household in San Francisco was expected to pay $600,000 each with the $5 million per black person proposal that they had. And I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was repulsed by that because you have so many homeless veterans on the streets, and they were going to give black people a home for as little as $1 just for being black. Mind you, slavery wasn't even in California. So why that was going to be the case, like I don't understand, but it's extremely unrealistic to think that the average family in San Francisco can afford that.
That's because Newsom wants to get reacted.
Okay, but you don't really care
Precisely.
about homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you,
I fuck no, my goodness. I hate Alec. Hey man, I use the word hate. I don't really hate him as a person, but like I hate when he speaks. I just want him to stop talking, because, and first, it's just a conversation, right? Liberals get so triggered. They want to be on this moral high ground so bad that they just start attacking people. And this is just a conversation. What is Alec being so petty about?
you don't support.
You don't know
I
me.
feel like all your arguments are ad hominem.
But you're here
Literally
as a
every
conservative.
single one
But
ad
you're here as a
hominem.
conservative. So what policies do you support for homeless veterans?
There's ways to address, I mean,
Specifically.
for homeless in general.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say that we didn't find a middle ground in there.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's a great ending note.
White liberals have a savior complex.
Liberals do such a good job, and okay, I heard something that I can get the moral high ground on, and I'm gonna attack that regardless of the point that's being made. It's so ridiculous. They just want to be the savior of all people. Oh, look at the question. Why liberals have a savior? I literally didn't even know that.
The statistics on how many people have seen What Is Woman are absolutely astounding.
When we tweeted out the film, it got more than
170
I
million.
think it's on. No, I think it's on my channel. I did watch it. Yeah, I think the reaction's on my channel. I watched Destiny.
Well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all four of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So
You're not funny. I don't need you fucking saving me. Who the fuck are you? Like, you're not funny. Bro, you're just not funny.
that's just me.
Well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being viewed as our skin color. Because when you have this mindset that you need to save black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to some of the other black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into this store, or, well, they're stealing, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse every single possible negative behavior from somebody, as long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find it
Really
extremely, it upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color, and to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. You know, MLK once said that riots are the voice of the unheard. So if
Oh
you
my
are to
God,
address
he's
the
doing
problem and stop.
he's doing the exact thing Destiny was talking about. He's doing the exact thing. That's actually crazy. This guy has no what's the word? He has no. He's oblivious. That's
The
there's a better
riots, you
word.
have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. You know, even if you as individual
nothing to
people
do
are
with-
doing fine and
no,
you don't want anybody
no,
else
no.
to get in the way of that,
doesn't-
that's
that
cool. And I'm
doesn't
not going to get it.
excuse rioting
I'm not going to be the one to get in the way. But
No.
the disparities are undeniable.
So if you take
It-
pride in
it-
having
I don't
a
know
white
why the
savior
fuck you just
complex,
said that.
what
That
is
had
it
nothing
you
to do
think
with
that you're
anything.
doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving black
Well,
people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can, and
But you're doing it on the backs of us. I
wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior for, and you're using me to make yourself feel good. That's what I'm
How
hearing.
am I hurting you?
You're not letting me have
That's
my
not
own
what she
voice. You're
said.
not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
You're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, you're speaking
This
right
guy
now.
has
You're
a
speaking
God
right now in this
complex. He thinks
particular
he's
setting.
fucking
But what
God.
you're saying is, like, you took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as black people can have a voice is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay, poor little black child, let me help you, let me help you. That's offensive to me. And I feel like you're making yourself feel good about trying to tame, help us. And it,
I also think that, like, when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on in certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine, and then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, you know, it's not a big deal, you know, they steal because they have to.
Destiny
Riots are the
speaking
language
facts
of the
per
unheard.
usual.
I think people
Favorite
haven't
white
read the full
liberal on the
context of the
internet.
quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard and you need to address the underlying condition, he wasn't condoning the rioting, he was just understanding it.
Obviously, there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which, in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
Give me an example.
Hi guys. So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and they're very
there's one
unpleasant
right here,
people.
right here.
But I don't
Right
think
here,
every
right
single
here.
white person who's
Yeah,
a liberal
pan the
or
camera
who
right at
is
him.
an activist
I know
for
what you're doing,
BLM or any of those
Jubilee.
things
You're panning the camera
necessarily
right
has
at
a white
this
savior
guy.
complex. I think that there's a lot of white people who genuinely think that black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery.
I
Maybe they're
promise
out.
What? I don't care if you haven't. I definitely heard people say that.
There, but I've never heard that.
Yeah,
Cool.
in second grade,
Don't
when
care.
they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to not think, wow, these people are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have no involvement
Every kid in
in
my
second
classroom understood the context.
People
so.
hate feeling.
Shut up. Alec is such an arrogant. Okay. Hey. I'll be more professional if I was in the same room. He just has terrible
Uncomfortable,
insight.
and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh well, like let me make sure that I'm different and like I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes across like I think it can land very poorly.
I'll tell you what, stop it. Stop
Okay.
it. Because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us. So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal. Just like I would treat you regular and normal, you treat us regular and normal rather than trying to save us.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes, because you were saying that you.
Final thoughts. Is this a new thing? Final thoughts. trying to get the smoke all the way out. Get like smoke. Get on. All right.
You
come
don't.
on.
You had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID. The last
I'm about
thing
to not care.
that was
I'm about to
on
not
my
care.
mind when I watched 60 and 70.
Oh, I'm about to not care. He's about to put the. This is the ground, right? Listen, look at it. This is the ground. This is where he wants to be. This is the ground. This is the moral ground. He wants to be he wants to be right here. That's what he's about to do right now. Give me a fucking sob story. So this is the ground. Keep that in mind. Let's see him keep continuously try to rise. Let's see it.
The thing that was on in 2020 COVID. The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their
He's rising.
deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes.
Rising.
I was worried about
Keep going.
health care. I didn't give a shit
going.
about taxes in that time.
Yeah, you reached
So
there.
when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
I see you once again elevating yourself above the rest of us. And
Oh, Renee, just me and her are like we're clicking because this is where he is right now. He wants to be right. All of you peons below him, he's laughing at you.
particularly at me, a white man elevating himself above a black person.
He called me a bootlicker.
That's what
He called you a bootlicker? What? Nah, he didn't do that really. No way.
Me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm
not
sorry.
triggered.
Yeah, Jacob's like, oh man, you're making us white liberals feel like that. Oh man.
Chilling, buddy.
So what I hope comes out
I'm
of this
chilling.
conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody is bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify. This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of America.
I hope something's in there.
UNITY.
I would like to say we're all made in the image of God, and so we're all have our inherent worth just because we're made in His image, and we should treat each other as fellow image bearers, not just by the color of our skin.
Is there a ring on that finger?
King said.
I can't tell.
He also did not like capitalism.
Shut up, Alex. Shut up, please. Shut up. Oh man, bro. Oh man. Oh man.
I think something that's really challenging. I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive, but something that I've learned as time has gone on is being a white person isolates you from a lot of the different types of racial struggles that people go through, and those struggles can take a lot of different forms. Not just, was my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad, but sometimes in the way that, people grow and develop, right? Like, am I actually choosing these political beliefs because they mean something to me, or is it because I'm black or my parents are black? If I speak a certain way, am I betraying my race? If I am a political orientation, am I a bootlicker? And I think that it's important when you're coming from a progressive point of view to understand that even though there are conservatives that are black people, you have to treat them as individuals and not just come at it with this like, you're black, you're a conservative, therefore here's like 6 or 7 different slurs that I can use against you, but they're approved because it happens.
Ending it with Destiny. I'm not mad at it. Jubilee knows what they're doing. Respect. Alex sucks, by the way. Oh, I kind of want to look at the comment section. Actually, I want to look at the
This is the 112th episode of Middle Ground, and we want you to.
All right, let's see what some people are saying. Would love to see a gay conservative versus straight liberals episode now. Ooh. I mean, could be interesting. The worst thing about Alec is there's no way you ever get him to understand that he's racist. Gotta give Alec credit for his honesty. He truly holds the opinion, if you don't agree with me, you're racist. As his intolerance showed further into the conversation. Alec is that type of person who should not be having political conversations with anyone. Terminally online. What's that? Alec is the type of person who thinks just because you're louder in an argument means they're correct. Honestly, he's just super annoying. Seems super aggressive for no reason. It pisses me off. Like talking over people doesn't make your point more valid or make people want to listen to you more. It actually does the opposite. Oh man, all of them are about Alec. Alec. Oh man. Oh, Chandler. Oh, this is an Alec one. Alec. Oh, that's funny.